You are listening to Lighthearted, the official podcast of the United States Lighthouse Society. My name is Jeremy D'Entremont. Welcome. Today is August 16th, 2026, and this is another edition of Lighthearted Light. Today we'll be hearing an edited version of an interview that was first heard in May 2021. The guest is Kirby Eldridge, a former Coast Guard lighthouse keeper. Kirby is one of the two last keepers of Boon Island Light Station, which is about 7 miles off the coast of southern Maine. Kirby and the other keeper at the time, Leo Berry, had to evacuate Boon Island during the devastating blizzard of 1978, and the light was automated soon after that. I think you'll enjoy Kirby's recollections of his time at Boon Island, especially his description of the blizzard. So let's listen to my conversation with Kirby Eldridge now. When did you join the Coast Guard?
In 1975, I actually enlisted on the delayed enlistment while I was still in high school. Some people may wonder how I ever picked the Coast Guard growing up pretty much in the Adirondack Mountains, but I saw a film actually of it, and of like a recruiter came in and showed it. It looked pretty neat. I just remember a guy telling me that at that time in 75, most of the military, Army, Navy, Marines, did a lot of training, where the Coast Guard did their mission every day. And that seemed to appeal to me.
That's a great branch of the service. So before you went to Boon Island, what kind of service, what kind of duty did you have in the Coast Guard?
It wasn't a lot, but I went to Yorktown, Virginia for MK, machinery technician training, basically a glorified marine diesel mechanic and / jack of all trades with anything that was mechanical. They kind of taught you everything. Mm-hmm. And my first duty station was the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Vigilant out of New Bedford, Massachusetts. Probably one of the highlights of that, which I really loved going to see. It was neat. But we did the rescue of the Argo Merchant, which was a big oil tanker off of Cape Cod right over the Christmas holidays that we went out there. We rescued the crew.
Wow.
We did I actually got to go on the damage assessment crew, and we went on board and checked it out. And then eventually, I think the Navy blew it up, but because they couldn't figure out what to do with it. We set the record for the Vigilant for the number of helicopter landings on the deck of the ship during that time.
Yeah, that's a pretty famous rescue at the Argo Merchant. That was during a storm, was it?
Yeah, basically, I think the skipper might have fell asleep or something, but he hit a sandbar, went aground, and then they got the storm. The storm really tore it up quite a bit, and it finally broke right in half. And then before the storm was over, it almost put it back together. I had some pictures in the scrapbook of showing it how it moved around.
Boon Island was your first light station duty, is that correct?
Right. They had a thing in the Coast Guard where you could put a bulletin and say if you'd like to swap duties. And a guy that was on the lighthouse wanted to go to a big white one, is what they used to call them. And I had been out for a year and a half, and I was like, that sounds pretty good going to a lighthouse. So
when you said that looks pretty good, you probably hadn't seen any pictures of Boon Island yet at that point.
Didn't have a clue what it looked like, nothing.
Were you a little shocked when you got there? What was your impression of it when you arrived?
Well, I'm trying to remember. That's a good question. I'm trying to remember the very first time I saw it. And I think it was by small boat when we went out there. And I just remember looking at, there's nothing here. It's just, especially as you're coming, say like a mile or so out, all it is a tower sticking on a rock, and there's nothing else. I'll be honest with you, I don't really remember like what my thoughts were. It was just, okay, here's the next thing to do.
Yeah. I would say barren is a nice word for Boon Island. There's a lot of different words you could use for it. It's just a little pile of rocks 6 or 7 miles out in the ocean. It's maybe a bit over 6 miles from the nearest point of land. It's like being in the middle of the ocean. Hard to believe that anybody could have lived there, but maybe even harder to believe that families lived there for years. You know, kids grew up on that little pile of rocks out there, which is
especially before modern kind of convenience. I can't even imagine living there in the late early 1900s. That had to have been a tough winters.
I always think of this 14-year-old girl in the 1800s, the daughter of a keeper. Her name was Annie Bell Hobbs. She wrote an article about life there, and she said, "I live here on Boon Island, where I am a prisoner with privilege of the yard." She was like she was in prison, but at least she could go out in the rocks. And also Celia Thaxter, the local writer, called Boon Island the forlornest place that could be imagined. I thought that was a good description. So you went there in, we're talking 77, right? When you,
yes. Yeah,
summer of 77, is that right? Mm-hmm.
So we went out there, and it was not bad when I first got there. We had a nice house. And I'll tell you, as a young guy, when they said, you come out here for 2 weeks and then you get to go home, that sounded like a pretty good deal. So that rotation for a young single guy sounded not too bad.
Yeah, that part is a good deal. So what was it like? There at one time there were two keepers' houses there, but when you were there was just one house, right?
Right. We had, when I was on there, we had the house that was connected through a little causeway to the tower.
Mm-hmm.
There was a block building generator shed that also had tools and that kind of things we kept in it. And then there was a small boathouse that kept what we called a peapod in it. And that was a small boat, like a rowboat, that we used for getting on and off the island.
So what were the accommodations like in the house?
They were actually pretty good.
Yeah.
We each had a bedroom. They had the upstairs also had a lounge area with a pool table, and we had in those days, a pretty good sized TV. The toilet was interesting. You burned.
I'm curious. You burned it. Okay.
Yeah. So you did your business, and then you stepped on the pedal when you got off, and then ignited it.
Wow.
And it burned whatever was in there. So the first couple of times, it was a unique experience.
Yeah. Hopefully it worked right. I would hate for that to.
We never had a problem with it. I will say that.
Oh, that's good. It seems like there's all kinds of possibilities for bad things to happen with something like that. Glad it worked right. So you mentioned you had 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off, right?
Yeah, I was off at my hometown so often that my friends and stuff didn't even realize I was still in the service. They thought I got out. It was good. And I even got a little side hustle going. My dad hung out at a local tavern, and his friends all liked fresh lobster, like most people. Well, I could get lobsters dirt cheap right there in Portsmouth. So he'd take orders, and I'd bring lobsters home on my trip, sell them, and it would pay for my trip every 2 weeks. So good deal.
Would they assign 4 men to the station?
Yeah, we had 4 guys on our crew. 3 petty officer third class, and then the station commander, I guess, for lack of a better term, was a petty officer first class.
Okay. But there are always 2 men on at a time, is that?
Always
right?
2, yes.
And you mentioned the Peapod boat. Is that usually how you get back and forth from the mainland to the island? Well,
we occasionally, they would have a helicopter that was on duty doing some patrols or whatever they happened to do. And if they did, they would take us by helicopter. And that was always like, yes, because it was a pretty quick trip. They had a little landing pad out there on the island, no drama. But the normal way was we'd take a 41-foot patrol boat from Portsmouth Harbor, and it was a pretty good ride out there. And then once we got out there, the Peapod, the guy that was leaving his shift, he would get in the Peapod, unhook it from the cable. It would slide down this ramp because the water in the rocks, there was too rough a surf for you to go down there. And it would take you about 30 feet out into the water. And if you were getting some surf, that could be a pretty exciting ride, slide down that board.
Yeah, I bet.
And you'd row out to the 41-footer was. We'd get him and his baggage up. When we first got there, they would give you, we'd get cash from the station commander at Portsmouth and go to the local grocery store and buy our groceries for the next 2 weeks. So we had to get those into the Peapod with yourself. And believe me, there was times that if you made it in the boat without getting wet, it was a miracle. And a couple of times we lost a guy over the side, and sometimes even with his groceries. But
okay, I was going to ask if you ever lost the groceries.
Yeah, we lost groceries, baggage, your sea bag. Occasionally you had to fish them out. But depended a lot on the weather. And you being in Portsmouth know the weather can be kind of bad sometimes.
Yeah.
Coming on would row in, and the last guy left on the island would hook a cable once you got close to shore, and they'd pull you back off the ramp. And that was usually the worst part, because right where the surf was breaking, depending on how the waves hit and where you were on that cable, kind of like a helium balloon on a string, you might go any which way. But
yeah, right.
that's how we got on and off.
Did you ever, trying to land on the ramp, did you ever flip over completely?
Never flipped that Peapod.
It reminded me of I interviewed a guy who was a keeper at Halfway Rock Light in Maine, which is another really isolated one offshore. And he said one time the TV had just been fixed and it was coming back in the boat from the mainland, and the boat, I think it completely flipped on the ramp, and the TV went to the bottom. So after waiting for at least a couple of weeks for it to be fixed, they had to get a whole new TV after that. So.
That's a bad thing to lose out on the lighthouse.
Yeah. So you had a TV you mentioned there, and could you actually see much? How many channels could it get? Do you remember?
Actually, it was kind of like the modern day cable, because we had pretty much line of sight from Portland down to Boston. So any TV channel all the way down through, we got them clear as a bell. So we had a lot of channels, a lot of duplicates, but we had a lot of channels. So the TV was a big hit. We did watch a lot of TV.
So the water in the cistern, you used it, I'm sure, for a lot of different purposes. Did you actually drink that water?
Yes, we did.
Was it cleaned in any way, or did you boil it or anything like that? Or what kind of water was it?
The only thing about it is sometimes it was a little salty.
Oh, okay.
We never filtered her, and that was kind of before bottled water, as I recall. So
I know at some places they had a system where they would, when it first started raining, they would divert the water away from the cistern and have it drain off outside. And then when all the gull stuff was washed off the roof, they would divert it back into the cistern, so that the dirtiest stuff didn't get in there. But
we probably should have.
Well, it's a little late to worry about it now, I guess. But you survived it. Before we started the interview here, we were talking about how many stairs there are in the lighthouse, and I think there's something like 166 or 168. I think it's around there, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. There was a lot of them.
Yeah, that's a lot. How many times a day do you think you typically had to go up and down those stairs?
You always had to go at least twice. So what you did is, in the morning when you shut the light off, you went up the stairs, and there was a canvas cloth that you put over the lens. And then at night, just before you turned it on, you went back up and uncovered it again. Also, if it was bad weather or bad visibility, you may go back up and turn it on and leave it on all day, depending. It was all weather dependent. But we had a reference point on the fog, but normally you could see it coming. And the foghorn was unbelievably loud. The very first time I heard it, I couldn't believe it. The windows rattled, pictures shook, and ours was timed at every 10 seconds. So every 10 seconds, you would have that. And I do remember thinking the first time I was in a foggy period, I'll never sleep, and this could drive me nuts too. I don't know. Yeah. But after a few days of fog, you actually had to stop and go, is the foghorn still going on? It's incredibly loud. I'm just telling you, unless you've stood, and our horn was pretty close. It was right off the back of the generator shed. Yeah. Which was probably maybe 50 feet from the house. It was loud.
Yeah. Do you think it affected your hearing?
I'm wearing hearing aids now, so maybe.
It didn't help, that's for sure.
We definitely didn't wear any hearing protection. We probably wouldn't nowadays, but.
Right. So when there were two of you out there, did you have shifts? Did you have 12-hour shifts, or how did that work?
We had what we normally did in kind of a normal day. We each had, so there was station duties like cleanup you had to do and maintenance around there and checking the generators, doing the dishes. We took turns cooking meals. And then one of our main duties, or one duty we had, is every 4 hours, we would call into Portsmouth and report the weather. We had a little weather station that had the wind speed and I think the barometer and a couple other little gauges, and we just read those. And so at night, we would take turns. Like if I did the midnight, the other guy would do the 4 o'clock in the morning. He'd set an alarm up. So we would do that every 4 hours. And that was kind of that. And then the standard, things have to be painted, things have to be cleaned, just that kind of stuff.
sure there was plenty to do, but there also had to be some time when there wasn't a whole lot to do. So what did you do to pass the hours when you weren't working?
You found stuff to do. You watched TV, you read books. Sometimes you went out and counted the seals, because we had a lot of seals as neighbors.
There's still a lot of seals there, I can tell you that.
You would go out there, and sometimes we had a little game and see how many seals you could get between you. You'd get between the ocean and the seals. Mm-hmm. And so if you could sneak down there and get I got 10 of them trapped. And the next guy, he would go do it and see if he could set the record. But little stuff like that. We did a little fishing.
So I want to talk about the blizzard, of course, the blizzard of 78. But before we get into that, I have one more question for you. One of the things Boon Island is known for is ghost stories. And I've actually talked to a number of former keepers at Boon Island, including a guy who was there in the early 70s, not long before you, who told me some interesting stories along those lines. But I have to ask you, did you have any odd experiences while you were there?
I don't really recall anything major other than noises that you heard at night. I don't know what was making the noise. I don't remember being really scared about it, but asking the other guy, hey, did you hear that pounding last? Yeah, I don't know what it is. And then we'd probably kid each other and say it's one of Boone's ghosts, but they don't bother you. So we're all out. They're stuck out here too.
Who knows? So let's talk about the blizzard of 78. Let me just mention for people listening who might, if they're not from New England, I guess the storm affected more than New England. It's a pretty famous storm, but it was basically like a hurricane with 3 feet of snow along with it. It was an amazing storm. I was living in Lynn, Massachusetts, near Boston at the time, near the coast, and we got like 3 feet of snow or close to it. I was going to college in Boston, but everything was closed for a week, at least a week, and the roads were pretty much closed. It was an incredible storm, and especially along the coast where there was a big storm surge. Extremely high tides, did a lot of coastal damage. So you were right in basically the eye of the storm, being a Boon Island there. So did you know the big storm was coming when it was on its way?
I think we knew there was some bad weather coming, but it wasn't like the first one we'd been through. So it was okay. It's almost from October until you leave or until spring, it's bad weather.
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't remember prior to the time it happened and going, oh, we got a major. And I don't think weather was hyped the way it is currently, at least down here in Georgia and probably everywhere. You see a front coming through and you hear about it for days. It's going to be giant. Yeah. So I don't recall all that. I know that Portsmouth Harbor did not ever tell us this is coming. I think we got it first. Mm-hmm. And when I relate some of the stories about it, I think kind of it'll back that up.
Well, I think there was another pretty big storm about a week before, as I remember. I think it was 20 inches or so a week before the big one. So there was already a lot of snow on the ground, as I remember it.
We didn't get a lot of snow out on
right.
Blew it off.
Yeah.
It would snow, but it didn't really, except for in some of the crevices. But it was mainly the ice spray was what you would see, because you'd get some neat formations in the way the waves would freeze coming onto the rocks. The one thing you learn is when you're out there, that house was pretty sturdy and there's nowhere to go. So
yeah. Well, you just made me remember there was a longtime keeper there named Willie Williams from Kittery, and he described there was a storm where everything got coated in ice on the island, and he was looking at that from the top of the tower, and he said he called it the grandest sight he had ever seen. It was magical, he said.
Yeah, there was some amazing ice formations after a real heavy wind and cold weather. Mm-hmm. Almost like waves froze solid. That's what it would look like.
What happened during the storm? Can you describe the experience, what it was like?
Basically, I know I had the 4:00 shift for the weather. And the midnight shift, the weather was up. We sent the report in and we went to bed. It was pretty normal. No, it was the other way around. I had the midnight and Leo had the 4:00. So I was ready to do the 8. So I went down to the weather room, little weather station we had the radio, and I was looking at it, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I hadn't really looked out that much. You could hear the wind howling and the waves crashing, but that was kind of life on the island. But
Yeah.
I looked at it, and I remember reporting everything in, and I remember telling Portsmouth the wind speed's 125 knots. Portsmouth came back and said, Boon Island, resend your wind speed. And exactly at that moment, the front door caved in. The bottom floor filled up to about 2.5 feet of water. All the sockets, the electric sockets around the wall started shooting electricity out of like little lightning bolts, and the radiator started steaming.
Time to go.
It was like, holy cow. So Leo was upstairs. You have to come downstairs, go through the causeway to get into the tower. So I yelled to Leo. I said, Leo, let's go. We got to get in the tower. So he's scrambling, getting his stuff. I grabbed a couple fall weather jackets, and we had a little go bag with some canned goods and candles in it that we kept in there. We grabbed that, and the whole time the radio was on the dining room table, and Portsmouth kept saying, Boon Island, send your wind speed. And I remember Leo grabbed it, and this is on the Coast Guard Weather Channel, and he said, the hell with the wind speed, the surf's up. We got in the tower, so we got in there, and we went up a pretty good bit, maybe like 3 windows up, and we're looking, and it was like crashing in there. So we decided to go a little higher in the light to get out of it. So we are now up about probably 30, 40 feet above the roof of the house where the house met the tower. So you're looking down, and you could look over and you could see the boathouse. And I think that boathouse had a plaque on it that was like from 1906 or something when it was built. So it had seen a lot of storms. Well, these waves were coming in, and they had to be 25, 30 footers breaking right on top of the boathouse. One of them, large one, hit the top of it. The boathouse kind of moved like a deck, like a house of cards, and just folded in on itself. And then another wave came right on top of it. And when the water cleared, the only thing left was the cement foundation and the winch. There was no wood, no boat, no nothing. And it was like Portsmouth Harbor had a camera out there, because it wasn't 2 minutes later, they called us and said, expect a large storm. We needed to weather secure our Peapod. And I told them, well, that Peapod and the boathouse headed to Cape Cod a little while ago.
Yeah.
And I think that was the first time they realized things were not the way they should have been out there.
It was serious. Yeah.
And then a little bit later, they called and told us we needed to get in the tower because it was going to get worse. And that's why I knew they really didn't understand. I said, we are in the tower. We've been in the tower. It's the only thing above water.
Yeah.
We've got no options.
Yeah.
So people, and I think I've seen a few articles, there might have been one you wrote, that said we cowered in the tower to wait out the storm.
I wouldn't have said that. I wouldn't use it.
And it was funny because Leo, which the last time I had contact with him was like 20 years ago, called me out of the blue and said he had seen that article and he was mad.
And,
And,
I think I wrote that you took shelter in the tower, but I definitely wouldn't use the word coward.
Well, we were scared when we were doing it. It was a scary feeling when you have it's probably a 2 foot thick wall and it's moving when those waves were hitting it. But it didn't take long to realize there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
You're here, so you might as well sit back and watch the show. And that's kind of what we did. And it was unbelievable. I don't know how long those heavy waves kept coming until I guess probably on the turn of the tide, they started to go down a little bit. But I remember we were looking at the house wonder what's left. And we were looking because it had a flat roof and you're looking straight down on it. And we had an empty 5,000 gallon fuel tank that was floating. And you look down and it was coming towards the house. And we were like, oh man, that's going to hit the house. It didn't even slow down. It went right through the house and came out the other side. So we knew that house was in bad shape. We spent a pretty long night, and most of the next day, and they finally kind of went, the weather subsided. They sent a helicopter out to get us. And this was probably the worst part for me, is you had to go up to the top of the tower, because they couldn't land on the island. They lowered a basket down, and if you ever seen the ring, the walkway around the lighthouse,
Yeah.
little fence, we had to get the basket and then climb over the fence and get in the basket.
Ugh.
And it was pretty cold and windy still.
Yeah.
So I guess I was the dumbest one. I did it first. I got in the basket, and like I said, you had the prop wash coming down. It was cold, hanging onto the basket, and I could just feel the sensation of going up. And it seemed like I was going up for a really long time. And I opened my eyes and I looked up, and the helicopter was still like 50 feet up above me. And I was like, huh. And I looked down, and Boon Island looked like a little thumb in the ocean. And they finally brought me up, and they had to pry my fingers off the basket to get out. And they told me, we had to get you above the ground wind so you didn't get swung into the tail prop.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then they went down, and it took a long time for them to finally convince Leo to get in the basket. They got us in. We made it in, and then finally got back to the Coast Guard station. The next day or the day after, we went back out to collect any of our belongings and see what the damage was. And it was amazing. The bottom floor of the house, there was probably a foot of space now between where all these boulders, the size of refrigerators, filled the whole floor to the ceiling. Unbelievable. The upstairs didn't even look like there'd been a storm. It was in perfect shape. Like I said, the boathouse was gone. The helo pad was broken in half. And the thing that was probably the most amazing was I walked out to the generator shed because I could hear a noise. 2 walls and the ceiling were gone. Nothing that wasn't nailed down was left. And the generator was still running. So I guess that would have been a good advertisement for that generator company. We got what few things we could get, that were up in our rooms. And then we found out later, I got reassigned into the small boat station at Portsmouth Harbor. And then we found out they were going to automate it.
Yeah, I think you showed courage through the whole thing. I don't know if I would have been able to get off and, do what you did with the helicopter, go up in the basket as you described.
We couldn't leave through the door on the ground.
Right. There's no other way out. Yeah.
It was all covered with rocks and water. You couldn't
Yeah.
So it was either spend some more time up in the tower.
Yeah.
At that time, and I'm not ashamed to say it, but I didn't used to have any problem with heights, so it didn't really bother me. Actually, after that experience, I never really liked heights again. It's always kind of like, kind of like a flashback, because when I looked down, and it might have been just the whole ordeal, but it left an impression on me, believe me.
I can completely understand that, and it's not hard to believe at all. I think I'd be terrified of heights after that. So you guys were the last keepers on the island after 167 years of keepers there, going back to 1811. So to me, you had a role in history there, and to me, one of the most important, interesting lighthouses in the country. Do you think about that at all? Do you think about playing a part in that history like you did?
I don't know about, especially then, as a historical part. I know it always made a major impression on my life. I'm actually glad I was able to go through it, just because nature and the power of nature, I have seen it unleashed a few times in my life. That might have been the biggest, but I think it made me, this may sound a little weird, but it made me appreciate life more. Like I like events now. I just feel good about stuff. And when I see things and get to live experiences, I really savor them. So.
Yeah, no, that's not weird at all. It's far from it. I think, near-death experiences will make you appreciate life more.
I mean, you say it that way. I don't ever really think of it as a near-death. It was just an awesome view of nature that most people never see.
Yeah.
I think there's probably, the smart person probably would have been fear and death, but I don't remember that part of it. Maybe I did, but it's just like there wasn't, there's kind of fight or flight reaction. Well, you couldn't really do either.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
So you were just there, and you just had to. It's kind of like, well, this is neat. It was neat to watch.
Would you do it all over again?
Definitely. Yeah.
All of it.
Every bit of it.
Kirby, I thank you so much for spending time with me, and let's do it again sometime.
All right, sure.
Boon Island was made available in 2012 to a new owner under the guidelines of the National Historic Lighthouse Preservation Act, but there were no applicants. As a result, it was put up for sale via online auction in May 2014. The owner is now Bobby Sager, a well-known Boston philanthropist. He had a new house built on the island a few years ago and is still standing strong, in spite of the tremendous storms that sometimes send waves right over the island. We're doing a live stream episode this Wednesday, August 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. You can watch it live on our YouTube channel or on our Facebook page. The guest will be Anastasia Makarova, who is from Russia and is now living in Slovenia. Anastasia ran a large Lighthouse fan club in Russia. She's led tours and done a lot of research and writing on Lighthouse history. She's got some interesting projects to discuss, and I'm looking forward to speaking with her. Again, that's this Wednesday, August 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page. Be sure to check out uslhs.org to check out all the things the U.S. Lighthouse Society offers, and please consider becoming a member or making a donation. For now, to all our regular listeners and our new ones, thank you so much for listening, and keep a good light.